Hello again. One of the things to which I object when it comes to supposedly serious books which tackle racism, its history and scientific origins, is that the authors always seem to be dishonest people who deliberately conceal information from their readers. This book, which I mentioned yesterday, Skin Deep, Dispelling the Science of Race, is a perfect example of that kind of thing. This is what was once known as disinformatia or propaganda. Let me read a little from the back cover. Here we are. Racial differences are rooted in biological reality, right? That's what a small group of anthropologists, psychologists and pundits would have you believe. Portraying themselves as brave defenders of the inconvenient truth, this group took the revival of race science from alt-right online message boards into mainstream academic journals. Well, that's a bit alarming. I hope that this is not the kind of alt-right website that they're talking about. Then we have this sentence. The first Europeans had dark skin and black curly hair. I'll come back to that in a moment. All this is very intriguing. So let's see what the author, Gavin Evans, has to say. He was, by the way, a supporter of the ANC, but whether that means the terrorist faction on Conto West Sizwe or Spear of the Nation, I don't know. He was also a member, of course, of the South African Communist Party and lived in South Africa for many years. These two things might give his writing a particular slant. There is so much wrong with this book that I could easily spend 8 or 9 hours listing errors, distortions and downright falsehoods, but I think I shall limit myself to just a couple of pages. These should be enough to give us the flavour of the thing. After all, on one of these pages, Evans manages to make 2 serious errors of fact in just 10 words. Surely some kind of record. Let's see what he has to say. I'm looking first at page 39, and I must confess, when I first read this page, I burst out laughing. Evans is writing here of the early Homo sapiens, that's modern humans, moving from Africa to Europe, and he speculates that the Neanderthals they encountered were probably capable of spoken language, which is almost certainly true. Okay, we know that Homo sapiens interbred with Neanderthals, so this is what he's talking about now. Given that Homo sapiens interbred with them, it seems likely there was some form of communication between the two groups. Only a middle-class intellectual could have written such a sentence. He makes it sound that Homo sapiens men were courting the Neanderthal women, as though this was an episode from the Flintstones. Does he really visualise 2 star-crossed Paleolithic lovers, the Stone Age Romeo and Juliet, madly in love and desperate to communicate with each other? When one ethnicity or nation conquers another, 2 things invariably happen. One is that the conquering males kill males belonging to the group who occupy the territory and are being driven out. And the other thing they do is, well, would anybody like to guess what victorious armies, what soldiers of victorious armies do when they've disposed of the men in the place that they've just invaded? Why, that's right, they tend to go on a rampage of rape. This has happened throughout the whole of recorded history, and the rapists really do not need to communicate with their victims, which is why I'm really puzzled here. Likely there was some form of communication. This is just the nature of young men when they're seizing territory and at time of war. They rape. Indeed, some young men will not only do this to women without communicating with them, they'll stick their penises into animals as well, or even things like vacuum cleaners. I suppose that in the delicate and polite middle-class world of Gavin Evans, this would be impossible because the men would be unable to communicate effectively with the sheep or vacuum cleaner. Further down page 39, he says this. The Cro-Magnons brought from Africa the ability to sew. Yeah, this is a bold assertion, but he has no grounds at all for saying so. In the first place, the Cro-Magnons are early Europeans. They're not the people that emerged from Africa at all. I don't know where he gets that idea from. It's a specific term which applies to Homo sapiens who had settled in Europe for thousands of years. By that time, of course, these people had already acquired Neanderthal genes through interbreeding, and so they were a distinct and separate population from the Africans who first entered the Middle East thousands of years earlier. Secondly, we have literally no evidence at all that people from Africa at that time had the ability to sew. The oldest needle ever found comes not from Africa but Siberia, and it was made by a Denisovan thousands of years before the arrival of the first Homo sapiens. I give a link in the description to this video to a piece about this discovery. All the early needles discovered have been in Europe and Asia, and there is no evidence at all of their earlier use in Africa. I think perhaps that Gavin Evans simply invented this because he's keen to prove that the Africans were so advanced. I turn now to page 99 and we read the following. Where are we now? Ah, yes. Recent decoding of the whole genome of the skeleton of Cheddar Man. Cheddar Man was an ancient Briton who met a violent end more than 9,000 years ago, true. He was found to have had brown skin, dark curly hair and blue or green eyes. This can only be a deliberate piece of deception on the part of the author. There is no other possible explanation. Here's the background. In 2017, Channel 4 decided to make a programme about a 10,000-year-old skeleton found in Britain and known as Cheddar Man. They teamed up with the Natural History Museum in London and managed to get a DNA sample from the skeleton, which was tested in America. This was done by a geneticist called Susan Walsh of Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. She gave the TV company a report, hedged about with careful provisos and various probabilities. The Natural History Museum and television producers then made a bust showing a black man and unveiled it in February 1918, claiming that the first people in Britain had been black. If you Google Cheddar Man, you'll see a lot about this on the internet because people thought that it was one in the eye for white racists, which of course was the object of the exercise to get some publicity for the Natural History Museum and the programme which was due to be shown on television. Even New Scientist reported on February the 7th, 2018, that the first British people were black and not white. Their headline was, "Early Britain from 10,000 years ago had dark skin and blue eyes." This is what Gavin Evans is referring to here. So this must have happened when he was writing this book. There then followed something of a scandal because the geneticist Susan Walsh publicly denounced the idea that Cheddar Man was black. She did this because a lot of other experts in the field had already been laughing about it when the news broke and making fun of her. There are so many different genes involved in deciding hair colour that it is impossible to look at an old DNA sample from thousands of years ago and work out the hair colour. It cannot be done. This is especially so when the sample is so ancient and probably degraded. Only New Scientist reported the retraction by Susan Walsh, which they did on February the 28th, 3 weeks after the initial announcement. It was such a good story, though, that no other newspapers wanted to spoil it. And even now, 4 years later, nearly all the hits on Google are about the initial announcement. I give references to the New Scientist articles in the description to this video. Since he was writing a book about ancient humans in Europe at this time, the author of Skin Deep obviously knew about this, but cunningly decided to keep quiet, banking on the fact that few of his readers would have heard about Susan Walsh and her statements. This makes it all the more incredible that on the back of the book we read about new discoveries in genetics, and it says Skin Deep stands up to the pseudoscience deployed to justify colonial rule, the apartheid regime, and the vast inequalities that persist today. I don't know how you're standing up to pseudoscience to try and mislead people with a bit of pseudoscience from a television company, but still. This is what I mean about the writers of books like this being dishonest. All of them play this game, concealing information which is likely to contradict their ideas and making bold and untruthful statements, hoping that nobody will challenge them. This is such a shoddy piece of propaganda. I was really taken aback by much of what I found in that book.